Welcome to another Into the Astrallands podcast. I'm your host, Eric Malachite, and today I've got a special guest with me. His name is Jacob Rundle, and he's not only a book blogger, but he's also the author of the upcoming book, The Destined, Augur of Shadows. It's the first book in the Destined series. Jacob, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hello, everybody. So, as stated before, my name is Jacob Rundle. I am the author of the up-and-coming Augur of Shadows novel releasing February 26th, and I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy you're here, too. So tell us about the book.
So, I really like this question because I feel that my novel is, I aimed for it to be different. I wanted it to be inclusive because of the subject matter. So, Augur of Shadows is about my main character, Henry, and his two friends, Elena and Simeon. And these three kids, two are 17 and one is 18, are burdened with the responsibility to bring forth this cataclysmic event to battle this evil, this primordial evil. There's really not even a name for it. That's literally ripping its way through the cosmos, devouring everything. And so it is their job, well, actually, it is their choice to either fulfill their destiny and bring forth this event to basically give them a hope of there even being a future, or they can decide to live their normal lives and just kind of wait for this evil to come and then just deal with the consequences. So there's a lot of elements, there's a lot of different cultures and religions and languages in this story because I wanted, I read a lot of, because I'm a book blogger, so I read a lot of stories about, post-apocalyptic and stuff like that. And because I wanted to do something different, I wanted it to be where the idea of a cataclysmic event could be not so much a good thing, but the only way for there to be a future, if that makes any sense.
Actually, it does, because the original meaning of the word apocalypse, it doesn't mean the end of the world, it means a revealing of a hidden truth. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure the comments will correct me if I'm wrong on that. Gotta love the internet, right?
Exactly. And that's what I was going for, because, I had this idea in my head, as every writer does, and every writer wants to be different, which, they should be. So that's how you stand out from everybody else, especially as an indie writer, because we don't get as much recognition, attention and whatnot. So you really have to stand out. And I was like, oh, that was my first idea. And then it's always, and I'm not bashing anybody who's written a pre and post-apocalyptic story, not at all. It's just I wanted, like I said earlier, I wanted to be inclusive. Like when there's something in this magnitude, it doesn't matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter what your gender, your orientation, anything. Like when it's the end, it's for everybody. And so that's why I'm very proud that. So my main character, Henry, is a white suburban kid who, unfortunately, I feel like I tortured him, just lost his father. So he's dealing with that. He's dealing with, and yes, my main character is gay. However, that's not the main focal point of the story. So he's lost a parent. He's dealing with his identity. And now he has this huge burden, this huge choice to make, and another character, Elena. She's a strong, fierce Latina who's been abandoned by her family because of her choices. And another character, Simeon, is a strong, intelligent, loyal Haitian boy, or man, I guess I should say. And so I wanted to bring all these different cultures together, to show that, like I said earlier, this event affects everybody. It's not just like a certain group of people.
Absolutely.
And so
that's a good point. I think that's a good goal.
So that's my goal.
Very cool. Very cool. So you say this is sort of like a cosmic evil, or not, that doesn't really have a name. That's almost kind of Lovecraftian in a way.
I have been. Some people have said that to me, and I'm like, hey, if that's how you want to see, that's that's great. I was trying to stay away from, because I've also been told it's very Cthulhu, and I'm like, well, again, if you want to think it that way, that's cool. If that's how you envision it, I'm not going to say or do anything to stop you from that. It's just I want to ensure that when I talk to people about my story, that you get the full effect. And by getting the full effect of this story, it's the fact that because it is so, I don't even like using the term ancient, because ancient still implies a form of time. And like on a cosmic scale, even though some people say that time is the only true measurement, it's still a measurement of time. Like this evil is just so old that, and when I say my story is inclusive and I brought all these religions together, so these three kids are guided by these otherworldly beings. You got angels and gods and like spirits and ancestors and just all this stuff. And because of the world that I built in this story, in which it will also be explained in the other books, as it should, is that there was this universe, or this system in place well before what we even can fathom. And in that time, obviously I won't reveal, things happened, whatnot. And that's kind of like my fun way of talking about a time before, like, quote unquote, the Big Bang, or if people want to believe in Catholicism or any religious idea, before the beginning of everything. This idea predates all of that. It's trying to widen people's their way of thinking, that the possibility of it. And so that is like the quote unquote time that this evil originated. And so throughout this book, when my characters are dealing with the things that they have to do, and we all know, like, when you talk about a cataclysmic event or apocalypse, the things that they have to do aren't, like, they're not deemed the most beneficial, if that makes any sense. I mean, come on, it is the apocalypse. So,
Well, what's funny about that is, in any war between any two nations, or even if it's between multiple nations, each side kind of sees themselves as the good guys, So
yeah, exactly. And and because I'm always trying to be different, and so because it's kind of like this duality, because they're told when they first find out about this whole idea of destiny or whatnot, that they are told that they have a choice, and that kind of messes with their head. Like, how can you, like, my main character Henry, so he's loves comic books and movies because he's 17. I mean, come on. And so he's told this thing that he has this choice to make, and then he's just like, well, that's not how it happens in the movies. And I'm like, so that's why I'm trying to make it more realistic. It's not just like this destiny is thrown onto you. It's the fact that you have a choice of actually fulfilling it. Just like in real life, we all have choices that we make, and you make a choice, you go with it, and then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And even though this is on a bigger scale, it's not any different. It's like there are consequences for going either way. And that's, again, how I'm trying to make it different, but then at the same time make it more realistic, as you can for a group of 17-year-olds. So
it's interesting that you mentioned, like, multiple religions and whatnot, because every major religion has a myth about the end of the world. Now, is there something in the book that reflects that? Maybe perhaps someone's talking about the end of the world to your main characters, and they're simply non-committal to it, because how many times have you heard the preacher on the side of the street claiming that the end is nigh and the end never comes, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's not that it's funny, but it's through the interactions through these otherworldly beings, like I said, because this evil predates everything, not even the gods that we know of, the angels, the things that we all have known for millennia. Not even all of them know of this evil, because if you follow the way that I wrote this story, like I said, this evil predates all of that. There was this time of something else. So there's another theme in this book where everything has its time. Even, and this is, and I'll be honest, this is probably where some people might have issue with it, and that's okay. It's just a story where even, like, the Hindu gods, some of them, they've ran their course. And even the Christian, some people who may be Christian, I said that even their quote unquote creator, or however you want to phrase it, because I am not Christian, but even that creator or God or whatnot has run its course, because it also goes into the fact that the way the world is, and how it seems that there are more wars coming, and famine and disease and just stuff like that. And so through interactions with these other beings, they're kind of like in the same position as as the three, as Henry and his friends. They're kind of like, well, we only know this much, and we can only help you this far. And at the same time, I've also instituted like a hierarchy in the spiritual world, and where it's all of these, even though all these religions have their own place, there's still this unified stronghold, this system in place. And so some of them, like through the interactions with some of them, I won't say who, they're like, I can only tell you this much, because it is like the protocol. And so throughout the course of the story, Henry's like, I don't understand, like, you're an angel, how can you not tell me everything? How do you expect me to go forward if you don't guide me? And as I probably should have said earlier, Henry has these prophetic dreams. he sees the future, and these visions and dreams, they're not normal. They're not just, he's walking through a forest and he sees the future. He experiences this, and I won't go into like how, but he's actually, like, I guess some people can call it like projected visions, where he's actually there. He's experiencing the vision. He can hear everything. He can smell everything. He can touch everything. It's as if he is there. So
very cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this is, I guess, a hybrid between dark fantasy and urban fantasy?
Yes. So, like, in the process of writing Augur of Shadows, to be honest, I was really conflicted because I don't like to necessarily label everything, because I feel like if you were to read Augur of Shadows, it really touches on a lot of different genres. And so, I was talking to a lot of other authors, and I'm like, so what should I do? Like, I don't want to label it, paranormal, when there's still a love story in it. It's a subplot. It's not the whole point, but it's still there. And like I said, my character, he's dealing with his identity. It's not I don't classify it as an LGBT book, because I feel like it's not the major point of the story. I'm proud to say that he is LGBT. He is an LGBT character. I mean, I don't have any issue doing that. But it's like, it's not the point of the story, and it's not a romance, but there is, a love interest. It's, so it was very different, or very difficult for me.
I had a similar thing going on with my debut. There is a love story throughout it, but it's a very tragic thing, and it's more of like a subplot. It's not the main focus. I mean, it doesn't matter what genre you're writing, love and death and all of these things, they're a part of the human experience. So I think that's very natural, honestly, and some people might be uncomfortable with the fact that your character is a certain way, but, screw them.
Oh, no, I am, trust me, I'm ready because I'm very active in the writing community on Twitter, and I'm very thankful for them, because I've never met a community that is so encouraging and supportive. And I've received a lot of messages, in private DMs, where they're like, I respect you as a writer, but I'm not going to read it because your character is gay. And I'm like, well, that is your choice, and I'm not going to fight you on that, because it's not my job on this planet to convince you otherwise. I mean, that might be not a good thing for an author to say, but it's just how it is, and I'm okay with that. And I know, like I stated earlier, the idea of something existing before, the quote-unquote Christian God, I'm sure people will be upset with that, and that's okay. And I'm sure I'll get possibly one-star reviews for it, and that's okay, because I truly feel, for one, a review is a review, and at least they still read it. Maybe at that time they read the story, it doesn't do anything for them and they're against it, but maybe down the road something will click with them, be like, oh wow, maybe that story wasn't as bad, or he wasn't wrong for writing a story, because that's what this is, people. It's a story.
So I've never understood how people sit there and say, oh, well, that lead character, that one character in this story is gay, and I can't relate to that, so I don't like this thing. I've been writing a cyberpunk series on my Patreon, a series of short stories and stuff, and the upcoming story actually features a gay cyber cop, and he's awesome.
Oh, cool.
He's no
Okay.
nonsense. He has a cybernetic eye because his husband tried to stab his eye out during the divorce proceedings, but they worked it out.
Well, I mean, let's be realistic, and I mean, I'll state that I am gay. Like, I am an LGBT writer, and so that's how I feel. That I mean, I don't care if it was a straight guy or a straight person, or I'm sorry, I'm not really good with labels, but anyway. So I'm not trying to offend anybody. Anybody who identifies with whatever, like, it could be my straight brother who wrote a story and one of his characters was gay. I'm not going to be offended, because I'm not going to say to him, like, you can't do that because you don't understand the experience. And I'm like, that's not true. You can't say that someone else didn't experience or learn from a different type of person. And
well, I mean, I'm not gay myself, but I can at least empathize with people being either ostracized or even imagining a world where where these things are not a big deal. I mean, Mass Effect did that in its original trilogy run, and it wasn't an issue. It was just like, oh, well, this person's either bi or gay or whatever, and nobody gives a shit. That's the way it should be,
It should be that way, and I feel like it's starting to get better because by being more involved with the Twitter community and as you've stated and I've stated, as a book blogger, I've read so many indie books where they're not the authors don't identify as being a member of the LGBT community, but one of their characters is gay, and it makes me so happy because it's 2019, and if I'm staying true to my own story and I'm saying that I have a Latina character, I have a Haitian character, I have friends and family that are, Haitian, I have friends and family that, are Latinos, I'm very proud of it. And so I will not stand in their way or whatnot. And so it's amazing when I see more characters. It's not just LGBT, honestly. It's, it's people of color. It's just everybody, because these stories should affect everybody. And that's probably my main point in my book, is that this evil will devour everybody. It will erase everybody. It doesn't care what your political views are. I mean, come on.
Maybe that should be one of the taglines. Evil doesn't care what your religion is this summer. No,
I know. If it becomes a movie, yeah. So it's crazy when I see these private messages from people about and, I mean, not all of them are aggressive. They're just being completely honest with me. They're like, I will still support you on with whatever you do, but I just can't read your story. And I'm like, okay. I mean, as an LGBTQ writer, I have read religious stories. I've read books that probably most LGBTQ members wouldn't read, but I'm trying to stay unbiased, and I'm just trying to see the story, because there still could be something that I learned from the story.
I mean, yeah. So, personally, I'm agnostic. Well, I always joke that I'm like one step away from atheist if it weren't for my paranormal experiences, keeping me somewhere in between. And it does kind of rip me out of a story when it's heavily religious to the point where it's like, oh no, this is real, But I'm like, yeah, but is it? But I understand where you're coming from, definitely.
Oh yeah. That's your conviction, and that's cool, and I support that. And because when I finished my first draft of Augur of Shadows, I was talking to somebody that I worked with, and I was explaining. I mean, not too much because I didn't want to give it away and whatnot. And he was like, well, is it a religious book? And I'm like, no, it's not a religious book. And I was like, why would you ask me that? And he's like, well, because you talk about God and all this stuff. I'm like, well, I mean, you can't really talk about any form of apocalypse without mentioning any kind of otherworldly thing. Maybe I'll just use that umbrella term. It doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be whatever.
A force that we as humans don't understand. That's probably where some of your prospective readers are saying, well, that's very Lovecraftian, is because, I mean, he has a very atheistic view of his pantheon of eldritch beings. They're neither good nor bad, and some of them would just as soon step on humanity as if they're ants as look at them. They don't care about them. That's why I think that cosmic horror and Lovecraftian elements are getting so popular now. And it's not that it was so popular in, say, fiction. There are very few cosmic horror books. Like, I was having a hard time finding anything that was like a straight up novel, like my debut is, that is cosmic horror. Because, like, it's more popular in film, and even the latest, like, Godzilla animated feature on Netflix, my friend was saying, oh, dude, you need to watch this because it has, like, Lovecraftian themes up the wazoo. And I think that at least is useful for at least looking at the tropes to see what works in that genre when you're talking about something that is outside of every religion known to mankind, and something that maybe even causes madness. Who knows?
Oh yeah, and that's how I'm a writer, when you want to somewhat cause pain to somebody else with your own writing. But that's a very good point, because you should have some form of reaction to reading something. I mean, if you don't, then I mean, then why did you just waste all that time reading it? You know, like, so for you to say that, you know, it's so true. And I wish people would just, when you go into a story, whether it's your genre or not, just kind of keep in mind that it's a story. That's all it is. That's how simple it is. And some people take it way too far and they start, you know, attacking the author, or they say this or that, and then they're like, oh, I can't believe you used that trope. And I'm like, you're kind of just, you know, making yourself look like you're like an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
you know, sorry to say, but it's like you are overreacting over a story.
Well, here's have you heard of the whole Comicsgate and Gamergate movement? And they're even doing this with films too, where they're talking about forced, quote unquote, forced diversity and things like that. Where their main point of contention seems to be that they don't like that there's so many gay characters or so many this or that, or, you know, oh, the main character is black. I don't know if they're actually racist themselves. A lot of people seem to think they are, but like the only thing that I really got from them is there's a lot of anger. They're very passionate about this. They want their old stories back, and for some reason, and maybe this is just me, the only thing that I could possibly agree with these people, because I spend a lot of time listening to different podcasts and different points of view, is that, you know, a character should be a fully three-dimensional character, you know, like a person, and not necessarily an agenda. And I agree with that, but at the same time, they are very, very vitriolic, and they are attacking people for their views, for their political ideology, or even because they used, you know, as you said, a certain trope a certain way, and they didn't like that, you know.
Yeah, so I've actually haven't heard so much about that, but I mean, I can still gather. I mean, like I said, like for one, like I said earlier, it's just you shouldn't, like, because, you know, I'm no one's boss, but it's a story, and people have to understand that the times are evolving. And I also understand that people love their old stories. They're just set in their ways, and
I don't think there's anything wrong with loving those old stories, you know. I don't, even if they have outdated elements, you know, you still have those old stories. But I also understand we don't need to be rebooting the same stories over and over and over again just to get that brand name and get those butts and seats, you know. I miss the days when we actually had new IPs, new films, like especially science fiction films. It was so refreshing to see The Martian come out, because it was, you know, practical effects. It was based off of an indie book by Andy Weir that blew up like crazy, and it was just genuinely good.
It's very, I can see how it's touchy. I agree that, like, the stories have a purpose, you know, no matter what they are. And you can't, like, you know, as a writer myself, I can't control how someone's going to react on how I use a certain trope.
No, of course not.
Because you know, on my blog, I just wrote, you know, tropes. What are they? Should you stay away from them? Should you not stay away from them? And because one thing that I am noticing about a lot of because I'm still an inexperienced author. There's nothing wrong with saying that. This is my first book.
Yeah.
And when I was doing all the because I did a ton of research, because, you know, a lot of people, before you write a book, you should really research, you know, traditional publishing versus indie publishing. You should really know your stuff before you do anything. And so one of the things I was, you know, researching was, because I didn't know what a trope was. I mean, I read when I was younger, obviously, in high school and college, and everyone was throwing around this term trope. What is a trope? I don't understand what this means. And so I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, that's, you know, I've always known what it was, you know, instinctually, but now I know, you know, the actual term for it.
I know the feeling, though. I used to run some different, like, D20 RPGs, and one of my players would constantly reference TV tropes, right? The website TV tropes, and I'd be like, "What the fuck is this?" And they're just like, "No, just check it out, man." And I think it's important to differentiate tropes versus cliches, because tropes, they're sort of essential to the makeup of the genre, and they do change with time, of course. Not every science fiction story is going to have spaceships, for example. That's a trope of, say, space opera or military science fiction.
And just like fantasy, I deem it as, like, there could be a dragon, there could be a wizard, there could be a witch, there could be a castle, there could be some magical item. It's like, and I, like, me as a writer, like, I'm okay with that, but I'm also okay with it not being there. I feel like that's where the difference is, and where people should be okay with or without using a trope. Like, as a writer, you should, like, just be confident in, like, in your story, and it does not matter what anybody else says. Like, people are gonna hate it no matter what, and people are gonna love it no matter what. So, you know, the fact that you say that, it's very important. You know, like, spaceships. Yeah, when I hear of science fiction, I think of spaceship.
But it could just as easily be dealing with, say, the super collider, bringing in creatures from another world or something. I read a comic like that when I first went to Comic-Con back in 2007. I don't have it anymore, but I was intrigued by the idea. It wasn't super well executed, so it's probably good that I don't remember the title, so I can't put the creator on blast.
Well, like I said, a review is a review, so.
Right.
It's okay. I mean, I like I said, I'm okay with somebody, like, give me a 1 star, like, oh, like, I didn't like your use of the term. I don't, like, use the term apocalypse in the story. I stayed away from it. That's why I use cataclysmic event, because I feel like by using the term apocalypse, that could be, you know, it could be a notion of a Christian trope. And I'm like, no, this is a very inclusive thing. So that's why I say cataclysmic event. And,
well, going back to what I said, what the original meaning of apocalypse is, to reveal something hidden, perhaps you could have used the word apocalypse in that context to bring a better understanding about, at least in the minds of your readers, as long as it fit the story.
Oh, and that's such a good thing that you say that, because, I mean, obviously, I can't say it. I won't say too much, but let's just say that is very true. Like, that is the way I was trying to go with apocalypse. That it reveals something. And what that is, I guess, you know, readers, if they want to read book 4 when it comes out, then they'll find out.
Very nice. So is there any advice that you would give to someone just starting their indie author journey? If you could choose one thing.
One thing. Okay. I would have to say, it's fun that we were talking about cliches. This is a cliche. When I say believe in your writing, because there are going to be times when you're writing it, you're like, oh, this sucks, and I hate this story. And especially when you're editing and revising it, that's when the real fun starts, because you're like, how did I miss this? I don't understand this. Or this is crap. I hate this.
What the hell was I thinking?
Exactly. Like, you know, this is, and, you know, I was working on one part of it, and I'm like, that is not how I wanted this to be portrayed. And it was a very rewarding experience. But at the same time, it was so frustrating. I can't tell you the number of times I love my story, but I hate it at the same time. And I feel like that's a good way to be, and that's okay. And that's what my first line of advice would be. Like, it's okay to hate your story.
Oh,
it is okay.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen. That doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. That actually means you're probably on the way to being a better writer, because by hating it, you know, you can put it away and go back to it, or not put it away. Just keep working on it. And that's very important, because I see that a lot, that people get so discouraged so easily that they just stop writing. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't do that. Just keep going with it. Push through that, and you will be rewarded at the end.
Well, it's interesting that you say it's okay to hate your story, because I started this one that turned into my debut. It's actually my 3rd book in 2017. So I've been working on this thing not nonstop for the last 3 years or so, but I definitely felt like that after the 8th and 9th draft, because I spent the entire last week or so before I started doing promo and formatting for the Kindle edition and print edition, just punching in copy edits from my editor. And that was probably my least favorite part of the process. So my question to you now is, when did you start this journey with this book?
So it would have to be, I started writing it. Well, I had the idea since I was a young kid. So I guess that's when I've always held on to that idea. And because I never started writing it, I don't know why, just life, I guess. And then it would be last June is when I started it, and then I finished my first draft by the middle of July, because I was just working on it nonstop. I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I want to do this. And finished the first draft, and I did initially query literary agents, because, and this is why I say that you should always do your research, because I thought in my mind, because my mom was a English major growing up, so reading all these stories and hearing about writers and like what the actual quote unquote right way to do it is. So I was like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get an agent. I'm gonna get an agent, and it didn't happen. I got rejected by each one. Initially, obviously, it's heartbreaking because you internalize it, you take it so personal, and that's not what it is. And
It's
then
entirely business with them.
exactly, and because I talked to numerous agents on Twitter, and they're super nice, and they give advice, and it's not a personal thing, because the volume of queries they get, it's astronomical.
Insane. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I could do that, but yeah. So I'd have to say last June. That's when I started.
Oh yeah, that's quite a quick turnaround. So you've gone through, like, did you have a developmental edit? Did you have a copy edit? Just for the listeners, if they're on their own journey, to know which steps you took to get this ready for market so quickly, because that is I know you said it's been on your mind since you were very young, and I've got a whole series that I planned that I've been like essentially writing and rewriting since I was a teenager. So I understand that greatly, but as far as just bringing a project start to finish so quickly, that's incredible.
So yes to all that. I use numerous beta readers during the process. Actually, by writing my book, that's how I learned what a beta reader was. Like, I'm not ashamed to say that. So for someone who's starting off, beta readers are a great way to trusted beta readers, let me say that, to just give feedback, because when you're looking at your own story, you're kind of biased in a way. Like, you think your story is perfect.
Oh yeah.
And when somebody gives you some critique on it, you're like, how dare you say that about your story? And again, it's not a personal thing. It's just whether it's flow, whether it's syntax, whether it's too many commas, not enough commas, or whatever. Because this is a very important topic, especially with indie authors, because if you have the money to spend on line edits, development edits, go for it. You should, because you're building your brand. This novel isn't just 400 pages with words written on it. It is like your blood, sweat, and tears. Again, cliche, but it's so true.
Oh no, it's absolutely true. I mean, I can't even, just knowing the emotional journey I was on, because I was in a very bad place when I was writing Echoes. Let me tell you, I won't even go into it. It's such a monumental part of my life. That story reflects so many emotions that I was processing at the time. And I was just talking about this with D. William Lansborough the other day on the last podcast that I recorded. And he was saying, there's a lot of people out there that are like Chris Fox. He's very successful doing his military science fiction thing, but he writes to market very quickly. And novels are such personal journeys. They are very personal to us. Like yourself, you've had this thing in you since you were a young person, right? Since adolescence. Yeah. So one of the things that I always tell people is, like, give it time to develop. Listen to your beta readers, and don't sit there and go, oh, screw you, I know what's good, because chances are the next day you're going to be like, oh, wait, they're right.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, I should have listened to that reader. Like, they told me to add that one part, and I didn't, and now I'm getting, like, when I get my reviews in, they're all saying the same thing. I'm like, oh, it's so frustrating. So yeah, and it's also very between, like, finishing the first one and then writing the second one. Initially I was like, oh my god, I've got to get this out, because, like, if you do the research, it as an indie author, some research says that you should be pumping these books out like every 3 to 4 months, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Like, I have a full-time job on top of this. I don't make a living off this. So it's a journey, to say the least.
No, they do say that every overnight success takes about 10 years. So
yeah, I mean, I know you said to say one thing to beginners. It's like, you are not going to become a success overnight. And I mean, my novel's not out yet, but it's still, it's common sense. It's like, you shouldn't go in thinking that you're going to be number one, that you're going to get all these deals because of your book. And like, that's not going to happen, because even there are numerous traditionally published people that still don't get the recognition that they do deserve. Whether you want to believe in luck or whatnot, it's just, you've got to be realistic when you come into this. And it's okay to be realistic. It's okay to, I mean, this is my opinion, it's okay that my second book doesn't come out till, I don't know, late fall next year. Like, that's okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. I always say that you should bust your ass and hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, especially in this business.
Yeah, because like, if you do bust your ass and, hey, you might become an overnight success. I'm not saying that you're not going to. What do I know? Like, but if you do, that's awesome. That means that you were meant to become an overnight success. I truly, wish you blessings, and I hope you are ready for what comes with that. Because when it's you always hear these stories about movie stars and singers about, quote unquote, getting overnight success. I mean, yeah, a lot of them are doing okay, but like, we don't know their real lives. We don't know how they're actually processing the fact that they can't go anywhere without being known. I mean, yeah, you're going to be like, oh, my book is everywhere. It's in stores, and I'm an indie author, and it's in stores, and they want to make a movie. They want to make a TV show. I'm like, well, as I said before, that's awesome. That's
I would just start wearing a disguise at that point.
Man, I probably just wouldn't leave my house, honestly. Like,
come on, we're authors here. We're introverts by nature. We don't leave the house anyway.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm like, I'm just gonna stay inside, and I'm just preparing for, quote unquote, being famous. That's okay.
Right. So are you going to be doing any conventions to support the book?
So I do, and that is one thing that I'm also like looking into. I also talk with Brian K. Morris and Charles Millhouse. They are two great supporters of indie authors, because they're also indie authors themselves, that they're like, hey, you should like look at this, whether it's not Comic-Con, but all these different like conventions. And like, I will be doing them. I don't know which ones yet, just because of time. I don't want to rush into anything. I like to be prepared. So I do plan on doing some next year. I just don't know which ones yet.
Yeah, I just submitted my application for Fairfax Comic-Con down here in Virginia. So we'll see.
Oh, that's
see
cool.
How that goes.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I definitely understand that, especially if you're going to have a booth and everything like that. It's kind of costly right there. You're hoping to make ends meet.
Exactly. And that's another thing too, when some people, and I'm not saying everyone does it, because you're so excited about your book being out. I mean, because I'm so ready for it, but because you have to take those factors into consideration too. You've got booth. I'm sure you have to pay for that. You have to order a good number of books, like your own books, all these things that you should have to try to stand out, to grab people's attention. It all adds up, and that you've got to take that, into consideration.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of overhead for one of those conventions.
Yeah, and if you're just starting out, and again, like, maybe you do have the money for it, and if you do, that's great. Like, get those books and, get those bookmarks and all the other things that people say you should have, because you want to entice readers, whether it's like a poster or a bookmark or a coffee mug or just something else to give a person purchasing your book so they remember you. Stuff adds up.
Oh, indeed it does. Well, do you have a website that our listeners can check you out at, your book blogs and everything else?
Yes, so you can go to, it's just jacobrundle.com. I do a weekly blog, like this week and next week I'm doing guest blog spots. So each day, an author just, I don't put any constraints on it. You can write whatever you want, just usually writing related. I do book reviews. I make time for you among everything else. I have a form on my website that you can fill out, and, I'll get back to you. And yeah, I'm all about supporting other authors.
And we should be, because we're all in this together. Our, I guess, combined success is good for the whole industry, I think.
It's true, and because I'm very like on Twitter, I'm very positive and uplifting. Because I mean, I agree with you. We all should be. We shouldn't be attacking anybody for anything. That's not why I joined Twitter. Like, if it turns into that, then I will gladly be like, I'll tweet like, oh, thank you for all the help and support, but I've got to go because that's not why I joined this. It's all about fostering creativity and helping newer authors gain the confidence
There is a
to
big
write this
difference
book.
between constructive criticism and outright, say, knocking people down for the sake of knocking people down. I mean, constructive
Yes.
criticism is fine. You need that. You need honesty, even if it's something that the person does not want to hear as an author. It's what you need to hear, typically.
I agree, and there are obviously I won't name names, but like 99% of the people that I've met on Twitter are the positive and uplifting, and they'll help you, and they'll give you suggestions. They'll help. Some of them will even help you beta read. Some of them will. Some of them, like right now, because I hit over 4,000 followers, I'm doing this kind of weekly thing where you just like and retweet what I tweeted, and I'm giving away, like, I'll give a free full line edit to someone's work in progress. Like, I want to do that because the writing community on Twitter is so supportive. Like, I would gladly do that for somebody else because not everybody can afford that.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you now, it's minimum $600 or more per form of editing, whether it's developmental, copy, line, whatever. It is really, really expensive, and not everybody can afford it. They just can't.
Yeah, it's very true. So are you an editor yourself? Do you do freelance editing?
So I do some freelance editing. I don't really talk about it because that's not why I joined Twitter. Like, I joined it for like as an author. But what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of indie authors that are just, like I said before, because they can't afford it. They can't afford $600 just for a developmental editor, and I'm just like, wow, that sucks, and that defeats the purpose of being a supportive community. And then because they feel like they can't afford it, they shouldn't publish. I'm like, no. So I've done numerous projects, but it's not anything. It's not on my website yet, but I'm thinking of, like, by the end of the year of 2019, because by then I'll have at least a little more workout. People will know me better. I don't want to just put it on my website like, oh, I'm offering these services, because then me as an indie author, if I saw that, I'd question it. I'm like, what are his or her motives? So, because to me, it's not about making money. It's about helping people. So maybe throughout the year, I'll just offer like free editing, or if somebody wants to call it beta reading, that's perfectly fine. But anytime I read anything, I still edit it. Like, I can't read anything without editing it. And yeah.
Pretty cool. That's pretty generous of you too. Okay, so just to wrap things up, where can people find your first book?
So you can find it right now. You can pre-order it on Amazon. You can only pre-order the ebook, but on the 26th, the ebook and the paperback will be available. But it will also be, you can pre-order the paperback on BarnesandNoble.com, which is, it's weird. I don't understand why they have that process, but okay. But so if you prefer paperback and you like Barnes and Noble, you can pre-order the paperback on Barnes and Noble, and then sometime in the year it will be on Ingram Spark.
Very cool. And your website once again?
Oh, it's simply just JacobRundle.com, and anybody can message me, even if it's just a question. It doesn't have to be for a book review. You don't have to hesitate about asking for a book review. Just fill out the form, and I'll get back to you, because I know, as indie authors, I know how important those reviews are, and so I try to get them done in a timely manner. I don't procrastinate on that.
Yeah, we live and die by our reviews, don't we?
It's true. I mean, and unfortunately, I'm not saying traditionally published people don't have to work for it, but they have that extra little cushion that we don't have. So we have to, push for those reviews a little harder. I mean, from my point of view, we have to push a little bit harder than they have to. And yeah, it's just how it is.
Well, and if they want to follow you on Twitter,
it's just at JRundy08. or you can just type in my name. I'll pop up. And yeah, I'm always on there. I'm always, like I said, I'm willing to help, because like this is how it should be. You should, whether you have time or not. If I'm busy, I'll shoot you a message like, hey, like I will get to you. It's just I'm doing A, B, or C.
Very cool. Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I had a lot of fun with this interview.
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, it's all about supporting each other. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. So thanks for coming on.
And like I said, thanks for having me. I love your broadcast.
Yeah, whether it's digital or over radio, it's still a broadcast. You are absolutely right.
Yeah. Hey, you're still helping people, and you're still getting people's names out there. So it's still an A+ in my book.
Yeah, well, I do try, even though I don't always have the time. All right, well, that was a lot of fun. Big thanks to Jacob Rundle for coming on the show. Go ahead and check him out at all those places. I will see you next time on the next Into the Astral Lands podcast. Have a good night. A quick heads up before you guys click off this video. My debut novel, Echoes of Olympus Mons, is currently available for pre-order on Amazon for the Kindle edition, and the print version will be available day one on April 11th. Head over to ericmalachite.com to check that out, check out the blurb, and pre-order. You can also get the first 3 chapters free in PDF form by going to the website. That's ericmalachite.com.